Namaste, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's session. The title of today's talk is Ego, the Master Storyteller. We have with us today Aditi Kaul, who is a dedicated proponent of integral yoga psychology. Her deep inquiry into the human experience, enriched by formal training in psychology, allows her to emphasize the importance of self work and conscious living practices in everyday life. Aditi offers online courses and workshops across various platforms rooted in the teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Welcome, Aditi. Welcome back once again. It's lovely to have you with us today. Look forward to a lovely session with you. Over to you.
Thank you, Arunima. Namaste, everyone. Welcome. And good to see some familiar faces, listening to the same thing from the same person. So I hope I may not sound boring and offer something constructive to all of you who have decided to spend some time here. And to begin, I think it's also interesting to begin in a way that the moment we hear the word ego, it's some sort of identification that comes. It's like, oh, something interesting. And if you just acutely observe yourself, you will feel that, oh, we'll talk about ego, as if there's an association and a separation in the same moment. And that is what makes it very enjoyable as a process. The whole idea of self discovery, the whole idea of self work, which we keep talking about, especially in the context of psychology, in the context of yoga, that it's right, really that situation I want to know, but I already know. Is there something more? So it's always that pull, push, which makes it a journey. And that is why we say that life is a journey. Now, when we talk about ego as a master storyteller, it's essentially to bring in the idea that all of us, and of course, it goes without saying that I'm speaking about it in the context of yoga, that how we look at yoga from a general lens, and also when we take the plunge deeper. So, how these things come together. So, in the process of evolution, we all understand that Shobinda has given that statement that man is a transitional being, he's not final. So, what does this statement tell us? That there's a certain sense of incompleteness that we carry. We are not complete, we are not a final product. So, there's still work to be done. So, we are work in progress. So, it's a sense of incompleteness moving towards completion. So, there's an assurance of completion, there's an experience of incompleteness. That is what we are in our day to day experience. And so, that is one level of the story. Now, another level of the story is that we all feel that sense of incompleteness, but who is in charge of that incompleteness? So while we were evolving, ego became a sense of an entity. So we also understand that ego is an entity, egoism is an attitude. So we need a certain sense, like when we are born as human beings, we need a sense of identity to make sense of our world around. Who am I? Where have I come? Like, which is the family, which is the social environment, the context. So while growing up, we have a sense of an identity to make sense of who I am. Now, as I grow, that sense increases. At one level, it looks like increasing. If you will look it from a deeper level, you will see that it is also restricting itself. Few incidences while growing up makes the whole idea the setup of who I am. One incident, one experience, something like the immediate family, the parents, if I have siblings or relatives, or the school, one incident in the school. So the moment I start recognizing myself as an individual, different from the world, it's like a bag suddenly opens. Every time I go out in the world to interact, I carry that empty bag and I keep putting those experiences in the bag. So today, like the first day of the school, in the bag. My first friend, in the bag. Some major incident happened, in the bag. And if you just look at it Some things you are still aware of, like even if I tell you right now that, okay, do you remember this thing, the first incident in the school or your first friend, you will immediately remember. So there's some stories in the bag which are conscious. There's some stories which you're not aware of. So there are certain, of course, psychological concerns which we have, which we don't realize that, okay, this must be the trigger. So in that bag, certain things are visible, certain things are invisible. And as we grow more and more, the bag keeps increasing. And that is why we say that, oh, I'm so loaded with the burden of life. What is that burden of life? It is that baggage of stories which we are carrying. And as our mind develops, our interpretation of those stories develop. So it might be an experience. My mind gives its interpretation. And it's the interpretation that invokes emotions. Because if you look at life from a very yogic perspective or just an inner experience perspective, experiences are movements of nature. I am an individual, there is an environment, there are other individuals. I interact with the environment, and experience is generated. I interact with other individuals, and experience is generated. And that experience which is generated is an opportunity for me to really experience life from the depths of it. That what is it doing to me? It's really like an offering to me to understand, to reflect on myself, to understand, to engage in a much more conscious manner. But if I'm not engaging in a conscious manner, if I'm just letting the experience drive me, then that experience becomes like a concrete story that this happened. And that story then becomes a reference point. And that is what memories are. That is why we have so much of conflicts. That if today I have a conflict with you, which I am saying I had an experience with you which didn't go well. So it's like today I'm engaging with person A. The experience was not good because of, again, my ego, your ego, whatever the situation is. We'll get into it later. So that was an experience. Now a memory is created of that experience. Now, next time when I'm interacting with you, I'm not open to the experience of the moment. My reference of that memory is the entry point in that experience. So it's already biased. So ego anyway creates a bias in our everyday experience. So at one level, it gives us a sense that, of course, I need to know that how much do I want to interact with that person? What is the steps I need to take? So all of these things, yes. But when does it cross the line and becomes a hurdle? That is something which is open to reflection. So when does an experience becomes a baggage? That is a gift of storytelling. That what story do I tell myself about that person? And we all know that stories are exaggerations. We know that childhood stories, when we, like either right now you narrated to your children or when you were a child, stories were narrated to you. Just the like exaggeration, just the animation, just that how larger than life stories and characters. So we all like it. And individually, if you just talk about from the evolutionary perspective, the purpose of ego is like meaning making, sense of self. Another element that comes here is the sense of self preservation. We want to protect ourselves. So we carry that sense of identity. It's like we are our own hero. Now, look at it how, if you just look at any example from our surrounding, just take example of cinema or literature, which has characters. So we are the characters in our story. Now, see when you're now you can think of any your favorite movie or your favorite character from the literature. What does the good narrator does or a good director or a good storyteller does in a movie? He or she creates a character, creates a story around that character. Story of struggle, story of love, story of hate, story of strength, weakness. So you just start investing your energy to start following the story of that person. Even and just you can think of any character which you want and or any movie if you want, and you see that the moment in the first few minutes of the story it is established that he is the hero, he is the villain, this person needs to be rescued, this person will help the person. We immediately have characters in our head. and you will not even realize it. You start favoring one, and that character becomes your favorite character, and something in you starts supporting that character. And usually it's like the protagonist who's like, oh, the hero who's maybe born in a very poor family, who's trying to make ends meet, then just meets a lovely person, then there's so it's something which you enjoy a lot. And even if, say, a hero, say, hits the villain, I'm just giving you a very basic example to just see how easily we are so vulnerably fooled in life. Like, just like human beings are such cute creatures, if you can call yourselves, like how we just believe everything which comes in our way in our life experiences. Now see, just like I'm giving you a movie narrative because that's what usually all of us relate to. Now you see that if you relate to the hero, if the hero is like hitting somebody or saying something which is, say, ideally it would not be right, but because you're hooting for the hero, something in you will justify that, yeah, this hitting is like, this fight is because the hero wants to win, or the right needs to win over the wrong. Or if he does something, that you will see that if you would have seen the action without the hero, you'd be like, no, this should be not done. But because the hero is doing, or heroine for that matter, like just the main character, you're like, yeah, but this needs to be done because it's for the good. Or you're like, even if you feel at that moment it's bad, or something extremely bad is happening to the main character, you're like, but something good will come. Again, that's a story in a story, that you are experiencing a certain kind of emotion in the story. You are experiencing that, but you're also hopeful that something better will come. So, what is it telling you? That the story is keeping you hooked, that you don't like walk. Like today, we are watching on Netflix and all of those things, but like olden days, you don't walk out of the cinema theater. Like you don't walk out of the hall. So it's keeping you hooked. And exactly, ego does the same thing with us, that we don't step out and say, start the path of yoga or start the path of self reflection. It's keeping you engaged, occupied. See, you need this. See, you have so much of trouble and you want to run away. You have so much of work to do and you want to go for a yoga retreat. Like something good will come. So just imagine how much it's not just the power, like the convincing power, but also the way it keeps us invested. So, in like I gave you this movie example, now just say that how we live our life as movies. We have different characters. We have family as different characters, our relatives, if we work at a place, or our friends, all our characters. And you like it or not, if I'll give you a moment right now for reflection, in your head, there's a ready-made template for everybody. You have already categorized the relatives, categorized the friends, categorized the family members. You have done all of those things. So it's in the movie character. Oh, if I want to have like a good time, I know, click on person A. I know if I'll click on person B, I will not have a good time. Also, all of these things, it's all a process of meaning making. That how is ego as an entity is required, yes. But when we start identifying with the egoism, identify with the sense of attitude which we carry, that, okay, I am. So we say that it's I centric. So I am the center point, I am the frame of reference, I am the reference point, and every character then stems from me. So every character in my life somewhere is coming back to what is my role in their life. So, what is my role in my parents' life? What is my role in my children's life? What is my role in an organization? And like you can just keep expanding because ego likes expansion. It's like more the merrier. It's like I am the center. It's like, say, for example, I am the ego, and I'm like, oh, so many people in the Zoom call. Oh, more. Oh, so many people want to listen to me. And less, oh my God, nobody turned out. So it's just that game which we play with ourselves, and there's a certain sense of enjoyment in that game. So that is why it really holds itself to something which is like, okay, I centric, these are the roles people play, and it starts taking charge. Now, when I say that it's a story of incompleteness moving towards completion, now who knows the completion? Ego doesn't know the completion. It is like in the class, if any situation, say this, or say you're working in an organization, you just know your limited role, but somebody, your senior, or maybe somebody who started the organization, has a larger vision, has a larger goal in mind, and then it's just distributed that, okay, you do this much, you do that much. But there is a scheme. So in the scheme of life also, there's a larger blueprint, the divine blueprint, that we know that what is completeness. Ego's job was just to give us a sense of identity, to make sure that we are individualized, and then we give up this individuality for the, like, an offering to the divine, that okay, I'm your instrument. That's the whole idea of yoga, the whole idea of surrender, that you just become ready. It's like, now I'm graduate. Like nowadays we don't get job while graduate, but it's like I'm graduate, now I'm ready to work. So now it's like I'm individualized. I know I have a functional mind, a functional emotional setup, a functional physical. I know how they are interacting. And now I offer my, like, I've applied for that to the divine. Please accept me as your instrument. And now I start working. And in that working, of course, all of these mind emotions, they play out. So how am I individualizing myself? Now, where is the error coming? That in this process of individualizing, ego, instead of giving charge to the divinity within, is claiming the charge that I am the master. So it's like, if on a stage, like I'm just giving an example of play, that if on a stage there are actors, so some people say we are directors, actor. Some people are like, oh, we improvise on the spot or whatever, whatever. So it's like there is a divine director and there's a desire director. Now, like, whom do you choose? So usually divine director is like behind the curtain. He's like, I have designed the master plan. It's like a good teacher. I have given you everything. All the ingredients are set. Now you go on stage and experiment. We all know that what true education is. It is all about experimentation. It is all about enabling the child. We know, like, especially in the light of integral education or in general, what do we speak about? We speak about these things, that how do I become an enabler? So the original plan of the divine is, how do I make the instrument an enabler to bring change in the world? Because we are talking about how to bring change in the world. That's the whole, especially when we talk about integral yoga, we are speaking about transformation on the ground. We are not talking about moving away. So, how do I bring the transformation on the ground? By enabling who are people on the ground. And who are the people on the ground? We human beings. That how do we become the instrument? So, how do I become an enabler? So, that becomes a point of exploration. But instead of becoming an enabler, which I can just help in the collective, I become like, oh, solo traveler. It's like group travel, I might have better experience, but no, what is modern day traveling? Solo traveling. I will just work on my own self. And it's not the real self work. It is like I will work for myself. It's not I will work on myself. If I work on myself, of course I need the world, because world is the tool, world is the trigger. It's like if I'm sitting in the room, I may feel that I've conquered the world. It's like if I come to a, like, say a virtual space like this, or a physical space, when I'm interacting, I was like, oh, I don't know this, oh, I don't know that, oh, this is my space for improvement. It's the interaction that tells us where we are and where we can go. But ego, in a way, because it wants to, say, give you a sense of preservation, it will give you the story that I'm preserving you so that you establish your identity. But actually, what is happening, it is isolating you from the world. So it's an isolation in the garb of preservation. And in isolation, there is no growth. There can be an element, an error, that, oh, I am different from people, I'm not engaging, and I'm some superior, some kind of a person. But actually, what is happening? What is happening is a sense of isolation. And also, so that is the error that comes. Now, also, if you look at another part, so there is a movie part, there is a stage part. Now, when I'm saying that divine is the director or desire is the director, now in your own life, you see that usually the real meaning, or even if I tell you at this point of time, if you want to think of one or two experience when you have really felt connected with yourself, or you have really felt that sense of expansion, those are the moments when you have really felt wide enough to move beyond just the little sense of self you have. So every sense of expansion, that even, say, if you had a very deep or a very meaningful conversation with somebody, you feel a sense of expansion. Why? Because you opened yourself and there was an exchange. You read something meaningful and you were like, wow, this makes so much sense, or this is exactly what I was thinking. When does that moment come? When you open yourself. So the moment you open the gates of yourself to embrace the world, maintaining a sense of individuality, yes, the whole idea is to individualize and then give yourself, is that what we discussed? But how do I open myself and engage and widen? And I widen, widen, widen. So when we say that, oh, I don't have an ego, we are not there. We can just most likely, we can say that, oh, I'm less on egoism, which means that I'm trying to incorporate other people's opinion. I'm trying to incorporate other people's expression, understanding, that how are people looking at what is the narrative I carry of the world, what is the narrative other people carry, and is there a match? Is there some sort of collaboration? Is there some sort of coming together? Like we often like this is such an like repeated usage that we say that we are not looking for a certain sense of similarity, that we don't want everybody to think alike. We just want that everybody should be able to hold space for every thought possible. So union is more of bringing different things together. And that is what we are talking about integrality. So when in integrality, we say that we have different parts of our personality, like mind, vital, physical. We are not saying that mind should become like the vital or the vital should become like the physical. We are saying we have different forms of our personality. Every part has its characteristic. We are saying that they should come in sync. So we are talking about harmony. And it is that harmony that will help us actually execute what we're intending to execute. So this is the space where ego hijacks the incompleteness and take that incompleteness as completeness and then wants to protect it. So incompleteness, ego is like, oh, now I am in charge of completing the story. It is like the teacher is absent today, the monitor is like, today I will teach. So the teacher is like, okay, the next day teacher will come, or maybe the teacher is standing outside the class and he's like, okay, today monitor is teaching. Let me just hold the space from behind, and one moment the monitor will look behind and say, oh, teacher is standing, teacher, please come. So we giving the way to the psychic being, we giving the way to the divinity within is like that is there. It's not that the teacher has not abandoned the class, but it's like sitting like one day when you will realize you will turn, it's like, okay, yes, I'm there. So that kind of, so now you know that the little attempt which our own ego makes, the intention is yes, that it wants to protect, but on what cost? So that is something which comes to our understanding. And now see what is the narrative the ego builds. So what are the different kinds of stories it builds? So if you think in your own life, if anything, look at any engagement which you are having. So they're the first, say the types of stories if we are exploring. So one, you can see that there is a defensive kind of stories, that the stories in which like you are the main character and every action you do, every experience you have, you want to defend it and put a stamp of this is me. So if somebody comes and gives you a little bit of like, nowadays we use very fancy like phrases like feedback. It's not like a critical feedback, but it's just for your like evaluation, or we're just telling you certain things. Was like, no. So defensive is more like we are not, like the moment you feel that you're challenged or you're hurt, immediately you will put your guard up. You're like, no, no, this is not required. So if you tell me, Aditi, your sound is not coming right, I was like, please check your audio, I'm fine. Immediately something in me will come up. I will not even give a moment to see that, okay, have I pressed the unmute, like mute button by mistake? No, not at all. Immediately, I like how defensive is reactive. It's like, please check your audio. I mean, it might sound funny, but just imagine how many little things we do it. We are not saying that on the path of yoga, it's only like something when divine will interact with me and I was like, no, no, I have no ego. These small ideas that whatever I am doing is, of course, it's right. You check your system. And that is how we work. And you know, even you can think of a person right now in your head that every time you try interacting with that person and tell that person that, okay, can you listen to me, or can you just like how usually when we have conversations, if the moment you feel either you can be the person, but just because we are on this group, so we are like, oh, we are good people, we're talking about other people in the world. So I can just give you an example. It's like, you're talking to another person, and the moment you try to question them, you will immediately feel the blockage. Either it will just change the topic, or it will be like, no, no, but you don't understand, you don't know enough. So what do we get in defensive stories? We get into that self-justifying loop. When I'm not able to see the error, I will not work on the error. So there is no, in defensive stories, there is no room for self-work. There is no room for self, in any way in stories, there is no room. But specifically, I'm just giving you an example that when you're blocked, it's like if somebody comes in your house, you're not opening the main gate only. So they will not be able to enter. It's only when they enter, they engage, they interact, you have a conversation over a cup of tea, over a cup of coffee, you start exchanging views, full stop. So sometimes you will meet people, or you may be one of them, whose ego is like, I am different from the world. I have a certain opinion and interactions. I'm not letting them enter. There is no entry. So the guard is standing right in the main door. But some you'll be like, oh, you can come to the living room, but not beyond that. So you can tell me one or two things what you change, but do you actually feel that I will change? No, no, but I will listen to you. So say somebody from a race, a psychology student who has an ego, be like, yeah, yeah, listening. So a lot of counselors do it. Of course, I'm not like saying anything in particular, but in general, in your head, you will judge. In your head, you will be like, Arey, there's like, no, no, this doesn't, yeah, I understand. The extreme of it is spiritual ego. That, of course, I understand that there is divine. I'm striving to be one with the divine. You can try. And see, I'm letting you try. Like how when we have gender politics, it's like the man saying that, okay, yeah, you can work. It's like, oh, yeah, you can do these things. So, I mean, like, there can be a lot more examples, but it's in a gender example or spiritual ego example where, because ego likes agency. So even giving you agency is my agency. And that is what I enjoy. So the freedom, so your slavery is disguised in freedom because I'm allowing that. And there can be much more complicated examples, but understand how interestingly, and that is why you will experience the most complicated relationships in the world. Because the like one story meeting the other story. So say in person A is meeting person B. In person's A story, the concept of villain is the concept of hero in person's B story. And when they meet, so it's like actually hero meeting hero. And it's like they will not even see what is wrong in the relationship. So it's like, of course, that is what it is. So even if the third person interferes or intervenes and say that, okay, just look, I'm trying. And if that is the defensive ego, is like, please, you go your home. Okay, I know. And then, of course, when you open, you come like all. So just imagine you're like one story meeting another story, different characters meeting different characters. So, what a complex human engagement we experience on a day-to-day basis. And now just see a little subtle difference between, say, I'm talking about the defensive story mechanisms. Now, see how defense, when taken to an extreme, leads to justification, distortion. So right now I'm just saying that, okay, I don't want to listen to you. Or no, I'm not wrong. So you told me that what, like I just give you a common example of mute or unmute or whatever. But it's like, okay, you come and tell me that actually you don't listen to me. So if I'm defending myself, then I'm like, no, no, I listen to you. But if I go to the justification or the distortion point, I was like, you are so boring, why should I listen to you? So I'm not saying that, no, no, I'm not listening to you. I'm agreeing that, yes, I'm not listening to you. But then I'm justifying my act that I'm not listening to you because you are boring. And imagine if I'm doing this to somebody who is a very close in relation, like I'm interacting with them day to day, and I was like, oh, you're boring, you're boring, you're boring. Now that person's ego story is I'm a boring person. So one person's ego defense is another person's reality. And then how many people engaging with how many people, so how many realities. Now come to that baggage. Now see how heavy your bag is. So first you have your life experiences, what you engage with, then other people tell you who you are. and you have those experiences. Then when you are sitting alone, then these like the characters from your back come out and interact with each other. Oh, that person told me that you are boring. Yeah, yeah, that person also told me. I think I am boring. Last time in school also, there was a friend. They used to never hang out with me because they used to feel I used to eat my tiffin alone. Even at workplace, the last time all of these guys went for a party, they didn't invite me. So I think today when that person told me I'm boring, I think he's right. Consolidated story, forever categorized. This is how meaning making keeps increasing. Like this is just very tiny example. It's like a lot of these things happen. So lot of our own, like if I even ask you what's your story right now, rarely it's possible that you will really be able to construct your story based on your own experience. Most of the time, it's more of your conditioning, most of what the other people have told you. We are raised by, like, while growing up, we create a notion, a perception of who we are based on other people's experience of us. That if, like, maybe in terms of physicality, in terms of emotional interaction, in terms of school, like, sadly, school is categorized as intelligence. If I'm a good student, I have a good mind. If I'm like, oh, if relatives are coming to my house, if I'm like engaging with them, oh, emotionally, yeah, such a good person, so nice to relatives, respect. If I'm somebody who likes to have my own time, such a bad child, not interacting with relatives, like always isolated, not engaging physically, or just especially teenagers have weight issues. You just all of us have experienced that the first time somebody will meet you after a long time, they will be the first remark on your physicality because that is the entry point. And with adults, it's not that, like, we know, but with youngsters, teenagers, we don't even realize that just one comment can really change or impact their perception of who they are because it's still young, it's still like developing. So this is just one way of understanding. So there's a defensive kind of a storytelling which takes a much deeper step and becomes like a justification. And justification, when I give you the example, can also lead to distortion. So that what happens. Now, if you just look at another level of stories, you will see that identification stories that I will like right now if we do a like, little exercise like I am, and if I just give you that fill in the blanks. So what all will you fill that I am this I and usually you will fill what you lack. It's like I don't have this. Oh, this is my target, or this is what I like. If you give them somebody, you give them a list like at the beginning of the year, so they will give you a gym membership, meditation membership, and enrolling in these courses, doing this, doing that. So ego creates a certain lack in us. Remember why? Because it is coming from incompleteness. It's projecting a pseudo completeness, but deep down it is creating a lack. It is forever attempting to fill a lack. But all of us on the path of yoga know that it is not the job of ego to fill the gap, but it is the job of the divinity within. Like in the integral space, we call it the psychic being, the divine spark within. It's only when we interact, we get access, we get connected to that, we can even begin to experience what completeness looks like. So when we are in the I am mode, so it can be an I am superior, I am inferior, I am this, or like usually when we say, oh, the victim mode is on. So I am the one who's suffering. You just, even when you go to any outside, like any cafes or whenever you're in a public place, or even when you talk to your friends, just imagine, like observe a common point that everybody is talking about somebody who has done bad to them. And in that story, they are the people who have like experience, who are fine, who know the right thing, but they are being victim to something. Why? Because they are so nice, they are so naive that they are not able to express themselves. But we forget that we are also that somebody in someone else's story. So who is actually hurting whom? Who is completing whose story? Like what is actually happening? So it's always like if I'm talking to my friend, I have a relative who's problematic. But I'm also somebody's relative, and I'm sure I may be problematic to somebody. But just in our story, because we are the hero, so if I am the hero and I am saying bad things about you, it's because I want good for you. And it's also because I can see I have the power. I have the power to see beyond. You you will come there eventually, like just hold on. But I can do it. So it is that identification that I am identified with the process, I am identified with the product, and then I'm just moving. And when that story is said, then another ego can have unlimited stories. I'm just telling you a few examples that are coming. Another way is comparison. Ego likes comparison because what is like life without comparison? Every day I wake up, I was like, the moment I look at my phone, like really very few people today can, especially of this, I mean, I don't even want to call it this generation, that generation, because I don't know which generation I am in right now. So I like when I talk to students, when I talk to like forum like this, like which generation do I fit in? And then my ego is very threatened. So I'm not even going there and giving you the example. But just imagine that how, in general, it's such a common notion every human being carries that the other person is living a better life than me. It's given in the same family, in the same locality, in the same country. I mean, I don't know if somebody of you have extraterrestrial activities or intelligence, you will say that, oh, life on that planet is better. I don't know. I don't have no experience. But in general, it is very, like very basic today. The moment you will see another person, at least from, I can tell you from personal experience, the moment I interact with anyone, I think, of course, that person knows better. That person understands better. That person has better life experiences. So there's always like defense aggravates the lack. Justification aggravates the lack. Comparison aggravates the lack. And in that lack, comparison comes and then you justify. So it's like you are, imagine that you are somebody who is very curious as a person. Or say somewhere in your life now you decided to turn towards the divine or turn within. Of course, it requires a lot of effort at every level because you're challenging all of these things which you're talking about. So then you become aware of your own narrative, the excuses that the ego comes up with. That right now, of course, I'm responsible for this. How can I not? It's like, okay, later, later, later. So maybe what I started at 20, at 60, I'll be like, okay, yeah, now I can. But no, no, like we have many stories, no? Like I don't remember the exact story, but there was something like, okay, now now I'm studying, okay, now I'm working, okay, now I'm married, okay, now I have a child, oh now I'm raising a child, now oh my child needs to go to work, oh now my child needs to get married, oh now I have to have grandchildren. End of story. So this is the nature of ego, to hook you to a process, make that process as the important thing. And if you are not doing that process, it's like a threat to your identity. So and especially today when everybody's life is out there on social media, you look at anybody's life, it's like, oh, that person is of course doing these things, I am lacking, I'm behind, so I should even more. Even now self-work has become a very competitive spirit. Oh, this person is meditating, let me also meditate. Oh, if like in my society club when people are talking about yoga, at least I should also start doing yoga, otherwise what will I talk about? So even the pressure to turn inwards is coming from a peer pressure. In the longer run, it might just work out. I mean, we don't know. At least you're turning, like whoever is turning you, but at least you are looking for something deeper. But just becoming more and more aware, like especially when we talk about identity and ego, it's like every adjective you use for yourself has a story. I am funny, funny has a story. Oh, I'm shy, shy has a story. Oh, I am in the victim mode, it has a story. So I am this because. So you also just bring your attention to the kind of vocabulary ego uses. But, because, therefore, like anything you start, so it's like, oh, I want to do yoga, but you can't spend time because you have to do something very so-called seemingly very important. I want to do this because I was not able to wake up early because I slept late. I slept late because, of course, I was working. So there's a lot of but, because, therefore, that can keep you away. So that is more of that comparison. And the to top it all, like what really keeps you engaged is the what if stories. The stories that are enmeshed in the error of time and space. That what if I miss the bus? Like, what if this goes wrong? What if this is not what I expected to be? All of us understand that there is something which is not right in our life or which is not complete in our lives. Just a right and wrong, beyond right and wrong, just not complete. I also have a hidden deep because all of us have the divine spark. It is not the divine favors human, like one human being, like, oh, I will give you the spark, oh, I will not come in you. Doesn't work like that. It is like all human beings have a sense of divinity, all human beings have the ego, because ego is a gift of nature, like psychic being is a gift of the divine. And the journey of life is to bring them together. And eventually, of course, the psychic being governing us or guiding us. But really moving from that element of what if to what is. The the most threatening part to ego is to live in the present moment. Ego cannot live in present moment because it lives in stories. It cannot face the reality because the moment it becomes or pays attention to the reality, there's a possibility that its story can burst. It's like if you go to a, say, when you watch movies on the screen, they are very interesting, engaging, you laugh, you cry. If you go on a shooting, how boring it will be if somebody of you have visited a set. It will be so boring because it is not constructed yet. It is happening on the job. So there's a possibility that you will be like, Arey, what is this? Like, this one scene is taking so much of time. Why? Because in reality, there's effort, there's movement, there's a lot more humanness required. When it's done, it's done. So the biggest indicator or that way to like really pull yourself, like pull your hook from the ego and base it in the divine spark is just busting those stories, experiencing the moment, that in this moment, what is happening. And that is why today, when you look around, suddenly, like I have spoken about it at many times, that how much the self-work culture has become so evident because everybody's talking about, like you go on social media, everybody's talking to how to live a better life. Everybody wants to change the world, and that's a good start. But talking again is a, I go on the social media, I watch certain videos, it makes me feel good. Yes, it has its place. Nobody's denying that. But how am I converting it into my action? Because the moment I start acting on it, the real story bursting will happen. And when the story bursting will happen, pain will come, suffering will come. Because something which I have, like, it's the baggage I'm emptying. It's like now, like Diwali is fast approaching, you start house cleaning, you will realize you have not used that something from an entire year. You're like, you will still keep it. You will use it. Array, this was there. I didn't remember it. Like I completely forgot this was my cupboard. So it's like give it away to somebody. No, no, what if I might need it? You would have not like remembered also that existed in your house, but you can still give it away because like what if it is required? And you will then maybe you will just change the placement. You will take it out from one cupboard and put it in another cupboard, and you will take it as a process of cleaning. And that is what even self cleaning happens in a very pseudo manner or in a very surface cleaning. It's like I take up one aspect of my personality, do a little polishing, and project it. There is no deep cleaning and there is no giving away. So, changing our personality, changing our nature in the light of yoga, it requires effort. Like this equation which we keep talking about, which Shravindu has given, that effort plus grace is transformation. So first you need to put in the effort to even become aware of that there's a higher power at working. There's grace that can actually help you clean your system. You just have to open up. But to open up, so if I'm just like this with the baggage of life, how will I open to the divine? So to really open myself for the light, for the grace to come, I have to lighten my shoulders, which means that I have to really let go of that baggages, which is essentially the stories I've been living with. So it's like multiple stories based on multiple experiences. That just one story that I am the child of the divine. That is the story, and whatever the divine tells me, I will do. For example, like just to like kind of bring it to where we started with that sense of incompleteness. Now, when say I give you that example of when the teacher is not there, the monitor is taken up. Now, the monitor may be very sincere, very much like, oh, I should not waste the time of the students. Whatever I know, I can give it. That is fine. Its intention is also nice. But it still has it, I am not the teacher. What if I miss something? So ego, though we feel that, oh, is such a, like somehow we portray it as such a bad person who's trying to like hijack everything. But the intent is that, okay, whatever I know I can give. It's like similar to, but imagine when you give up that and you carry, like, hold the hand of the divine. It is like if I'm a young person, like, or if I'm a child, I go out in the world. When I go out with my parents, I've like, if you remember that, you feel so secure. You're like, I'm holding the hands of my parents and I'm walking in the busy streets, I'm safe. You walk, you enjoy the scenery. Why? Because you know that you're being held. Now imagine going out in the streets without the parents, how alert you are, how scared you are, how much you're like, okay, how will I cross the road? What if a stranger talks to me? And of course, all those kinds of fears, uncertainties. So ego is like that child walking on the street alone who wants to defend itself, protect itself, wants to assert itself, all in good faith because it wants to assert life. But the same when the ego holds the hand of the divine, the same streets, the same life is this only. It's not that your life will change when you open yourself to the divine. It's just that when you hold the hands of the divine, you can enjoy the scenery. Why? Because you're protected. Why? Because you are guided. So that this one story, then you will not be like, oh, if I meet a stranger, what will I tell? Like, how will I introduce myself? What part of me I will introduce? So I was like, no, my parents are there. So, like, one identity, child of the divine. Rest, everything will take care of itself. So, how from multiple stories, multiple baggages, because just one point I remembered, I'll just bring that point. It's like how interesting the ego is. It's like you are the same person, but you see how when you talk to different people, how different aspects of your personality come in. So if you're talking to somebody where you have to like assert yourself, you will quickly go to the bag and you will be like, which story tells me that, oh, I'm such a good, for example, I'll be like, oh, I'm such a good speaker. Oh, that talk, it was well, I had good feedbacks. Yeah, you remember that talk, you were also there. So I'm just going to that story, which is asserting. Or say if I'm talking to my mentor and I want to say that how bad I have become in speaking. So then I will turn to my bag and I'll be like, remember that where everybody was like, it was so abstract, Aditi, what is it? We didn't understand. So I have both the stories because stories are experiences. Some days you have good experiences, some days you have bad experiences. So to my mentor, I want to assert that, see, I'm not because like self-pity is also something we enjoy in, and sometimes or most of the times or whatever. So just see that you have all the kind of stories. You just need to quickly see that, okay, in this situation, I need affirmation. So I will give a story. In this, I need a little like attention, love. I will give a story which is like, which projects my incompleteness. Here I will. So this also plotting and all. So we are all directors of our movie, but it's just that knowingly and unknowingly we have given desire, self-assertion, self-affirmation the charge. The only thing we have to do is take the charge from the monitor, the desire, and give back it to the teacher. So the moment we give our charge of life to the divine teacher, then we are done. So then all these stories, all of these, it's like all embracing. It is like that child who has done something mischievous and come to the parent and is like, I did this, and the child is standing like this, that okay. But what does the parent do? Come, it's okay. So it is that divine embrace that dissolves all the ego stories. But for that divine embrace, you actually at least once try to attempt to look up and not just say that, no, no. It's like I only have to protect myself. No, there's a larger grace at play which is protecting you. So just kind of, yeah, I mean, the moment I do this every time, like in most of the session, it just does something. It just changes. So yeah, so the whole idea is to convey that, okay, enjoy the ego ride, but make sure that it takes you to the divine. So I think maybe I can just pause here and see if Arunam has to say anything or anybody else has to say anything or anybody. So yeah, thank you all of you to listen to my ego stories. And yeah, namaste.
Thank you, Aditi, for this beautiful, enlightening session. Really interesting and amazing insights you shared with all of us. Thank you so much. And as you said, let's check with the participants if anyone wants to ask or share something. Sundar ji has raised the hand. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. And good evening to all. You have raised a very, very important number of issues. Number one is that the day we evolved as a human being with the mind, body, and the senses and the heart, from that day, unfortunately or fortunately, man has considered himself to be the supreme most, and that has created biggest gap which cannot be filled with prakriti, with nature. Now we want to go back to that situation. It is not possible. So doomsday, it's going to die. We will not survive as a human race. That's very, very evident today. You talk about, stories bursting. Number of points I've noted when you talk about slavery, so controlling, religion has become a tool of controlling today, whatever religion you take. See, in our country, I will not mention what is happening today. And the point of equanimity. Equanimity comes in. Why? Because referring to the synthesis of yoga by Sri Aurobindo and message of the Gita and Savitri, mainly these three possibles which are been able to go through sometimes. Now, what does it mean, all this? It means very simply that it's Lord Krishna saying to Arjuna that you have a swan, you have an elephant, then you have a chandal, a dome, who burns the bodies as per the Hindu tradition in the cemetery or the cemetery ground, who buries the body. All of the Jains who put it on the hilltop. See, and also the elephant, the swan, and swan, chandal, elephant, and cow. For Trinetra, Trigunatritra, it is called, in other words. So, and if you see no difference among them, then you are blessed. So that is the point. And the grace comes, secondly, lastly, the grace will come to you without your knowing. It is definite. You will not know that the grace has come. How will you? It's not impossible to know directly. How will you know it? You will know it indirectly, provided you have that opportunity is given to you. You take that opportunity and plunge into it, for which you will get all the signals. What signals you will get? By looking at yourself, looking at your ego. What she says very correctly about what you speak. The general tendency in my family is not to talk to the youngsters. Keep quiet. Keep quiet. Don't say anything. What if you ask? If you're asked, otherwise you're sidelined. And enjoyment is the sine non quam of the present world. Enjoyment, full enjoyment of life, nothing else. So that is what it is. I just wanted to say a few. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Dr. Sangeeta, please go ahead.
Hi, Aditi. Hi, Dr. Bichlani. Hi, Purnima. Sorry, Purnima. I actually, Aditi, I've heard you on several occasions on these talks, and today's talk was my favorite because it was so humorous. Thank you for bringing in that humor. It was wonderful. The only thing that I would like to just maybe add a little bit to is that I agree with you because I have absolutely no idea which generation I belong to or even which country I belong to anymore because it's constantly kind of adaptation, changing according to context, according to time, according to culture, and according to interaction. But the thing that I did want to bring in is what Sri Aurobindo and the mother have always talked about, which is that we are not one personality or one identity. We actually have so many different personalities within us that may be spanning, that probably are spanning outside of this linear time. So I think that is, we're at a point in existence now where those things are also influencing us. And I think part of also this personality formation, or at least personality interaction and management, is that there are those parts which seem like they are defended by ego. But I think those parts, only a limited amount is supposed to be shared and interacted with on this level. And therefore, the ego also has a role and function in regulating this multi-dimensional aspects of us. And therefore, I think, and all, if you think about it, all these different personalities are also enacting and experiencing their own multiple stories. So how is that now? It's become so complex, you're right. But I think existence itself is so complex. And truly, I think one of my favorite divine attributes is humor. So and I think that's one way where we can laugh at ourselves, we can laugh at the context, and we can laugh at life. Because I'm sorry, sir, Sundarji, I don't really agree with what you said that we are all going to get extinct. I don't think that's the case. I just think things will change, and that is
Extreme, ma'am.
definitely
Extreme.
going
That
to
was an
happen.
extreme. I
You
mean,
know?
stretch it, no? You're stretching it, stretching it. That was my
Oh,
point. Yeah.
it's so, Aditi, this was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Participants, anyone else wants to share or ask something, please go ahead. You can drop your messages in the chat box. I can read it out. We already do have some words of appreciation for Aditi. Please go ahead. Yes, Divya ji, please go ahead.
Yeah, this surrender comes only when the ego is totally down or absolutely no ego. Or how do we get there? I mean, surrender. Are there any methods?
We can just begin by turning ourselves inside. It will just come as a natural process. You don't start with surrender. You start with an idea of devotion, and it eventually leads you to surrender. So idea of devotion leads to experience of devotion. Experience leads to more and more widening. And one day a point comes where there's a sense of oneness. So it cannot be done mentally, but you can start with something which is like opening yourself, purifying yourself, bringing yourself more and more under the influence. Like when everybody was talking about the different personalities, also bringing them together. So before surrender, it's more of aggregation, bringing together. Are my mind and emotions aligned? Am I able to align my mind and my body? So it begins with alignment. Alignment leads to opening, offering, and the process unfolds. So it's like where you start and how you start.
Thank you, Aditi.
I'm sorry, can I speak? I don't know to raise hand on Zoom, so I unmuted myself. Thank you, Aditi. As always, there's so much to know oneself. Like when you speak, like it's relatable. I wanted to. You always tell us that we have to unburden ourselves, but and then I keep going back to the question, how every time, or like how do we let go of all this baggage? And I wanted to also ask you another question about, we have different stories, which are different experiences, which we bring out maybe in memory or in a new situation, like you were giving an example of when you're speaking or when you're with your mentor, it's a different story. But what is this? What does it depend on the story which we keep to ourselves when we are alone? Um, is that like a state of confusion, or do we? I mean, I feel mostly, yeah, I don't know. What is this story I tell myself, or how does it depend on? Or maybe I'm confused. And I had a third question, which is also okay, I'm always a confused person, so I will admit to it. But this is probably again an ego thing. I don't know, but you talk about different egos, like the vital ego, mental ego, physical ego, then the ego mind. Could you speak a little more about it? Or, I mean, I don't have to understand probably, but I just still would like to know if ego is a part of different parts and also it comes from the mind, or they're different minds and ego is a part of different minds, like vital mind has a vital ego, something like that.
Sure. See, when it comes to when you're alone, it's mostly the stories are not just for the world, the stories are also for our own self. Like, because stories are what? They are aligning to the image which we hold. So, the image we hold in the world, and more likely the image which we hold within ourselves, that who am I? Like, you, in the smallest interaction right now, so many times you said, I'm a confused person, I'm a confused person. So, it's an image which you hold that I'm confused. So, when you're sitting with your own self, if any new information comes to you, the story projects, but I am confused. So, even if you're arriving at an answer, that comes as an interference that I am confused. So something in you gives up in the middle. So when you're sitting with yourself, can you sit with yourself with no narrative that I am this or I am that? I am like how that book, no, I am that. So you don't even remove the that for the moment. I am. And then you see what emerges. Usually, when we talk about self work or self reflection or sitting with our own self, we are just repeating ourselves. We are not inviting new things. So, whenever you're sitting with yourself, don't replay things in your mind. Clean your mind.
How
Replay
does,
can look like cleaning.
but what is the process like? Is it like I have to reject
Okay,
the
so
thoughts?
tomorrow, the moment you wake up in the morning, just sit with yourself and just wait and just see what comes in your mind. Don't, like how we say, no, don't give fish, teach fishing, like a very old saying kind of a thing. Don't give material to your mind that, okay, today I have to do this, but I can't do this. Don't start the story. Wake up tomorrow, the first thing, sit with yourself and see what comes to your mind. Just observe what thought is coming to your mind. And first, I'm giving you like literally step. First step, observe what comes to your mind. Then just become aware of how are you interpreting what is coming to your mind. Are you giving your identity badge to that thought? Are you getting occupied and hooked to that thought? Yeah, 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 this is what needs to be done. Yeah, 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 this is me. Or you're simply able to see it. Because if you don't give it charge, it will just go. Then it will just movement. It's like when you step out of your house and say you want to go and eat, you cross so many people on the road. You don't stop and engage with every person, then you will not reach where you are supposed to reach. But you will encounter them. You will just pass by them, but you will acknowledge. Like even like in Pondy Auroville, there's such a small. We every time we go on the street, we're like hi, hello, and we just walk out. We don't stop and talk to every person because we meet them every day. Every day I can't stop. Like imagine if I go to the ashram every day, I start talking to everybody every day. Then doesn't work like that. So I'm acknowledging them, but I'm not stopping to interact with them. I'm not engaging with them as like, oh, what will that person feel if I'm not talking? I see them every day. So same is with my thoughts. They're repetitive thoughts. The day I stop engaging, I acknowledge that, you come every day. It's fine. Then I will have more space to say, sit at the samadhi and meditate because I'm not wasting my time or engaging with other people. So when I'm not engaging and with the repetitive thoughts in my mind, I'm creating capacity for something higher to come. So do it as a practice at least for 4 5 days and see you will know the answer.
But like you said, the
Because
new to not have new material, but the new material keeps coming like constantly, like it never stops. And
it's like the first example that came to me when you said new material, I don't know why I thought of a detergent like a washing powder, like detergent. I was like, you think it's a new material, but it's not Ariel, maybe it's Tide. So it's the detergent. You just feel that, oh, it's new because it's not Ariel, it's Tide. But understand the quality is the same. I'm blaming myself, or I'm focusing on that, oh, I'm not good enough. So it looks like a new material, but it's the same logic. It's the same message you're giving to yourself. And that is why change is not coming. So, I mean, it just maybe because somewhere in my head I was thinking about purification. So at the material level, it turned out to be like that. So and of course, because I also know you, just start observing at a very practical level. And that's the beauty of self-work. No, you don't have to know every step. You just have to start the first step with all your sincerity, and then you know. But because of our human conditioning, we're like, first step koi aur bata de. It's like I have clarity of the first step. I have assurance. I have the seal that first step will like help me win the race. So, and then I will start because again, ego lives in memory. It lives in retrospect. It's like till the time I don't have an assurance, I don't have a stamp of I will win, I will not start. But the point is I will win if I will start. So start doing it and then you will see how it works out. Okay. And there's just another question in the chat box, Elorina. The idea is that yes, ego is what? And I'm just combining that answer and the other answer, the question you asked about mental vital ego. It is like ego is nothing but a representative of your personality. So at the mind level, when something's representing your thoughts, your ideas, the I assertion, that's the mental ego. Something that is representing your emotions is the vital ego, which is more of desire. All those qualities. So ego is a representative representing the mental characteristics, mental ego representing the vital characteristics, vital ego. And that is why ego can be used in the sense when you're saying for integration is, I am becoming aware of my personality. It's like if I have guests in my house, I want to make them like serve them food. So first I have to cook the food. So to cook the food, I have to become aware of the ingredients I have to use. So becoming aware of the ingredients which I have to source to cook the food is becoming aware of the personality attributes. So different parts are like different cuisines or whatever you want to take it as that. So if I have to like really integrate and offer, but to become one, first I have to be aware of my separativeness. I am separate and I'm longing to be one. But if I'm assuming that I am one, then there is no scope for self-worth. So that is kind of the answer to both your questions. Yeah. Okay. I think we can just close with golden words by Ramesh Bhaiya. He's been silent for a long time.
Yes, sir. Dr. Bijlani, sir, would you like to share your thoughts, please?
Thank you, Aditi, and thank you, Arunima. Let me start with the question that Aditi herself raised. Which generation does she belong to? You are a young body embodying an old soul. So now you can decide whichever generation you belong to. And to support why I said an old soul, because she always comes up with several gems whenever she speaks. And just repeat a couple of them. We are an incomplete self, but with assurance of completion. So the process of yoga is moving from where we are towards that completion. And then that a self-work, does it mean working on the self, or does it mean working for the self? Now, the stories, which we create are not only based on what our interactions are in the world, but also about oneself. And in general, they are rather flattering stories. And that's how we end up projecting an image of ourselves, which is much better than we truly are. But then we repeat that so often that sometimes we ourselves convinced that that's what we actually are. And sometimes the others might reinforce it from childhood onwards. The parents giving us a lot of special importance, and then later on maybe others too, keep reinforcing it. And therefore, we actually get convinced about what we think we are, although we actually are not. But then just the opposite can also sometimes happen in childhood as well as adulthood. For example, in childhood, although it's not spoken about that commonly, there are plenty of cases. In fact, the prevalence is much higher than is known of different types of abuse during childhood. The child not only being humiliated and made to feel useless at home and at school, but also beyond that, actual physical abuse, sexual abuse, the creation of the child of a sense of betrayal of the trust that the child has in the parents, and it's a fear of abandonment, that the parents might abandon me. And that happens at a stage when the child is completely helpless, and although the child realizes all the drawbacks of the environment, the child has no choice but to stay with the caregivers, which could be the parents. And this then convinces the child that actually I'm perhaps not good. The sense of self-worth and self-esteem does not develop at all. Sometimes it can happen in adulthood. And that I've seen in quite a few cases happening in women after marriage. Before marriage, the child was given all the boost and the importance and made to feel very special. And that created, along with the child's own ego and story of how much the child is worth. And then suddenly this girl is married. She's the youngest in the family, and she's almost made to feel like dirt. And that's a fall, and she can't stand it. Now, whether it happens in childhood or it happens in adulthood or both, which could be, which is also possible, which is worse, because why it can happen in both is because a child who has suffered that way in childhood is quite often likely to also quickly fall in for any partner or anyone who shows a little sympathy or concern when she's grown up, because she's hankering for it. But then the match actually was not made for her, and the result is that once again she goes through the same, and this idea that actually I'm perhaps really not worth anything gets reinforced. But then the ego is a great survival mechanism. What happens in such cases is that then she knits another story which will somehow help us live. As Carl Jung said, that just as the body has a self-regulating mechanism, the mind also, the psyche also has a self-regulating mechanism. It regulates itself. So when everything seems to be lost for such a person, childhood, adulthood, either of them or both of them, then this adult creates in the mind a story about what the person is, which is completely cut off from reality. The person starts living in an imaginary world of her own. And then we say that this person is mentally ill. She's cut off from reality. So in fact, she has actually cut herself off from reality and started believing in an unreal world, which has become real for her because that is a much more pleasant world where she's worth something. And that's how she starts living in that world. But then, is there a way out? Yes, there are methods of bringing such a person also out of this type of a belief. And one of the common principles that applies to these situations is that you try and make this person once again connect this emotional part of the being, which is frozen and has become the entire psyche of the person, once again connect with the intellect. Because the intellect, is still capable of rationalizing and seeing the reality as it is. So whether it is through talking or whether it is through other types of exposure and expressive therapies, but the idea is that you once again reestablish a connection of this emotional mind in which the person is frozen with the intellect, so that the person is able to see the reality and once again realize that the image with which this person has lived is not actually the final evaluation of the person. The person's ego can create a much better story with a lot of justification. But then this is the intellectual approach. What about the spiritual approach here? The spiritual approach, again, Aditi, as she pointed out, is that one should not ever feel that these stories are the end all of what I am. They still are an incomplete self, and there is a larger self. And not only that larger self is there, when we align ourselves with that larger self, we just put in a little bit of effort, and there is divine grace waiting to pull us out, rescue us from this type of a situation where we seem to be completely lost. So the divine grace is always available, and that's how the therapist can bring in the spiritual approach into even counseling such a person who to the rest of the world seems to be completely crazy or psychotic, and this person is now mad and perhaps has to be put on lifelong medication. So these are the types of ideas that occurred to me while this was going on. Aditi, as you said, a meaningful conversation can help us expand. And that is the type of talk that you gave. It made all of us expand, and therefore, I think I'm echoing the opinion of everyone here who has attended and who will watch the video later, that it has been a talk that has made us come out of our little cells, expand, see the larger and wider picture, raise our consciousness wider and also deeper and higher. And therefore, although I know you are a little reticent to speak, I do earnestly hope that you'll agree to speak more often and give us this experience of expansion again and again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
sir.
hi,
Thank you.
Aditi. Hi, Professor Bijlani. Hi, Arunima. Hi, Ruchi. So nice to see you guys. And Srividya was somewhere here. So nice to see and hear your talk. Thank you. I'll watch it tomorrow because I just joined in the middle. Is this a regular talk you're doing? Or just
Yes.
invitation?
Yes, every Saturday, the Yes Talks. This is that session. Yeah?
Okay, sorry. I was missing that. Thank you to
Okay.
Natalia as well. Thank you to Natalia that put it in the group.
We'll be uploading the recording on the Yes YouTube channel. The Yes Spirituality YouTube channel. This is how it is spelled. You can visit the channel for content on yoga, education, spirituality, and related subjects like self-help, psychology, and wellness. Aditi, thank you so much for sparing your valuable time for all of us. Thank you so much. And participants, it was lovely having you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll close today's session now with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.
Namaste.